A little Irish coffee for the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is more like a true Irish coffee right here.
Yeah. With a splash of coffee. That would be.
I think I think true Irish coffee is you drink coffee and then you drink whiskey. You don't need to mix them. One right after the other.
A podcast about bourbon and the ones who drink it. This is Bourbon Matters. Welcome to Bourbon Matters. I'm Jake.
I am Dan.
And I am Gold Eagle Jake.
And today we are playing what would you do with $100 million to start a whiskey distillery?
Yeah, and in all context, this was sent to me about a half hour ago, and I thought when Jake said the idea of a $100 million distillery that there's a new distillery being built that I missed that we were going to talk about. Instead, Jake, is you have $100 million to create a distillery, and I found this out less than 30 minutes ago. And I have some questions on this, though.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Jake sent this in the group text like 4 months ago. So it shouldn't have been a new idea.
It was about a month ago, but we never decided we were going to speak on it today until about 30 minutes ago.
Well,
so
yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
and
but
to be fair, I still don't remember what I ate for dinner last night. So that month ago thing.
I just think it would be a fun topic. It'd be cool to see what we'd all do with it. I've had no serious conversations, but many conversations with people about, is it too late to start a distillery? If you had the money to do it, would you start a distillery?
No.
Where would it be, etc. So we're all going to take our opinions on that. I kind of figured Dan was going to be in that boat where he thinks it's too late to start a distillery. So
questions on this, Jake.
Yes.
Just so I know when I'm putting mine together. Is this like a loan we're having to pay back, or is this some rich uncle that we didn't know died and gave us $100 million to start a distillery? And
no, this is some rich uncle, and we'll just say you got $200 million, but you're going to use $100 million for the distillery. So if all fails, you still got $100 million.
All right, so the longevity of the distillery doesn't matter. You can build big.
I think you want the distillery to be profitable.
Yeah, you want it to succeed. You want it to be profitable. That's the whole idea. We're not just burning $100 million.
Yeah,
starting a distillery now.
What can and would you do with $100 million if you were set on, I'm going to use this to start a distillery? What would you do?
All right. So if Jake R is talking about starting a big, contract distillery, then he just blew $100 million. Just going to throw that out there to start off with.
That's not my plan.
All right.
Don't put words in my mouth.
You were asking about prices of very large still systems, so I just wanted to make sure that
I want a lot of whiskey.
Okay. All right. So that kind of shapes my idea. It's not going to change what I was thinking anyways. I just kind of wanted to know and let everyone else know what the plans were, because regardless, I think it's close to burning $100 million right now, but that's a different episode.
An episode that we hashed out over the course of the past 20 episodes.
I can't wait for the end of this year just to have a big I'm right dance and just rub it all in Jake's face, Gold Eagle Jake's face.
Dan. We had our biggest spirits month ever in history last month.
I'm glad. I'm glad. That's good for your store. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
What was number one? Tequila?
Bourbon.
Oh, okay. Good.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jake R.
Not even close.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not super surprising because of the clientele at your store.
Yeah, I mean, full transparency, it also could have been skewed by a couple full barrels that went out, but yeah.
No.
For those of you Dans out there that say we're declining,
I didn't say you're declining. I said bourbon's declining.
No, that's what I meant. We are declining as an industry. I'm still not on board with that.
All right. All right, that's fine. That's fine.
I will agree. I think we're hitting a little lull right now, and I think most of that is due to a lot of people just kind of maxing out their collections. But I still think there's going to be more and more people getting into it, especially as these people with big collections start getting their neighbors, their friends introduced to whiskey. I think there's a whole segment of people that are still untapped yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Now that millennials finally have moved out of their parents' basements and have real jobs.
The problem is millennials are, but we still got like 25, 30 years till Gen Z does that. So
that's true.
Jake, you've obviously thought about this a lot because you just ran a pen dry trying to write everything down. You've definitely thought the most about this. Why don't you go ahead and tell us? Rich Uncle Jerry died and left you $200 million. $100 million says you set up for life. So the other $100 million you're going to waste on the distillery. How would you waste that money, Jake?
So my business plan would be to start out with a blending operation that would provide the money to cover operations cost for a distillery. So I'd start out by allocating about $65 million to the blending operation, which would be somewhere around like 15 million for the facility and then 50 million in barrels. The intent.
So right like that, you're over halfway through your budget. All right. I like it coming out big.
Yeah.
Big swinging right off the bat. Over half of my money going into something that's only going to subsidize my business for a few years. I like it. I really like the business plan.
So
that's the MBA coming in right there.
So the blending, so most, I don't want to run into the type of confusion, let's say, that a brand like Bardstown kind of ran into, where it's just this constant guessing of whose juice is in their bottles and things like that. So my blending brand would be totally separate from the distilling brand.
Okay.
So that there's no confusion on who's producing what. And the blending operation by design would be a continual ramp down until the distilling operation is fully functional and at the point of being ready to bottle. And then maybe there'll be like 2 or 3 SKUs that are permanent on the blending side, but we don't need $50 million of barrel inventory to supply those for past the initial point of the distillery setup. So on the production side, I'm not sure how this is actually going to be split up, but I allocate like $20 million to the actual distillery and facility. Probably have to do a little like sliding calculator on how much capacity I want that still to have so I can get the other things I want. Like I want a fully automated production facility. And I want it to be a nice like headquarters building. That would ideally include like a small visitor center or like at least be able to have tours and things go through it in like an upscale kind of environment.
So in terms of like size and stuff, similar to like what we saw at Pepper. Nothing crazy for a visitor center, but spots where you can go. Nice area for tours, nice area for drinks, nice little outdoor patio area, things like that.
Yeah. So, and what I'd like to do is have the production area be almost exclusively like offices and production, and then just have like a small area for the tasting and tour like portion. I would want a separate facility that would be like the visitor center where there's like on-site food and cocktail bar and things like that.
When you say separate facility, you mean different locations where people have to drive
no, like
from one to the
on
another, or like
on the same
one
campus.
piece of land? Okay, multiple buildings.
Yeah. The reason I'd prefer to have a separate like visitors center is to kind of keep people that are just like hanging out away from the like production area.
Keep the drunks away from the tours.
Well, I mean,
Get drunk on the tour, then go to this place and be annoying somewhere else.
Yeah, right.
Okay, that makes sense. I don't have a problem with that.
Kind of force people to move throughout the campus a little bit and really like experience it. So I feel like sometimes you don't really get to do that at distilleries.
Okay.
And then, so part of that $15 million for the site would be, I have this idea of having like one rick house be the single barrel rick house where people would go and pick their single barrels, and have it set up in like a really cool kind of way, like how like the Jack Daniel's single barrel is, where you're in like a glass room surrounded by barrels or something cool like that. I put that at $5 million.
Too.
Yeah, Bardstown too. That might be a little overkill for that, but I'd probably put it at like 1, and then the rest would go towards actually building normal rick houses. And I would not spend any money on making the rick houses fancy. They just need to hold barrels.
All right.
So that's, I believe that's my 100K.
So you're going
100 million.
big, 100 million, not 100K. 100K is not going to build you much of a distillery at all. I don't think you can even build Barnstormers set up for 100,000. So you're going big production. Where's your distiller going to be located?
Yeah, where is it at?
I kind of like the idea of having it be a little bit outside of the normal. I would like it in somewhere warm. Maybe Kentucky, but maybe somewhere more interesting like South Carolina or I don't know. South Carolina would be cool.
I think if you're thinking of a place outside of Kentucky, it needs to be somewhere that is favorable for distilling with the laws, and it also needs to be somewhere where there maybe the bourbon boom hasn't really hit yet. Someplace where there isn't other craft distilleries, to kind of capture a new segment of people there.
Yeah. I'm trying to like cultivate a destination, so I don't want to put it in like Minnesota where no one's going to want to go for half the year. So yeah, probably somewhere like South Carolina or like I'd have to check the liquor laws because I don't really know, but like the southern states I feel like would be better for climate. I don't want to compete in Kentucky. I think that's kind of would be nearly impossible for this budget. I don't really want to go north of Kentucky because the climate starts to get a little less favorable. Maybe Oklahoma or something random like that, but then you got to deal with tornadoes.
I'll say till a tornado comes out and takes a rick house down. But then what you do, Jake, is then you make a special bottle of tornado whiskey.
Tornado warehouse whiskey.
Tornado warehouse whiskey, and you sell it for way more than what it should be worth, just because it got hit by a tornado. I like that idea. Good call. That's great marketing. A distillery should do something like that.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
All right, so you're going South Carolina, a big production facility, heavy on production, lots of barrels, lots of whiskey only from the sounds of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then
maybe some gin, but I kind of like the idea um, that Castle and Key did of using their whiskey mash bills to create their gin. So you don't have to adjust production to do that.
You still have to change
Besides,
production because it's a lot different distilling process to proof it up that high in their systems.
well, I mean, from
So,
the like fermenting side, you can kind of
yeah,
just leave everything the
yeah.
same. Obviously, higher proof and everything like that, but and the botanicals you have to deal with, but yeah, something like that would be cool. No vodka, definitely not vodka.
Okay,
I agree. All
interesting.
right. Me
Jake,
next.
go ahead.
All right. My distillery is going to be in Kentucky. No questions
Ooh.
asked. I love Kentucky. I could see myself living there. So that's a big factor in that. Say what you want about bourbon and where it's going, but I do feel that bourbon tourism still is nowhere near peaking. All of these big distilleries are investing a ton of money in restaurants, facilities on site. Even they're starting to build hotels on site. And more people every year are taking vacations to Kentucky just to visit distilleries. So I'm definitely going to be in Kentucky somewhere. What I would do is buy a ton of maybe 3, 4, maybe up to 6 year barrels, some young stuff, put it aside, hire a consultant or somebody with good distilling background, have them handle all the heavy lifting and distilling and mash bills, obviously with my opinion in there as well. And I would lay low and not really promote my brand for probably 5-10 years while we let barrels age and while we start distilling our own. And during that time period, I would focus on building a really nice restaurant and patio and bar. And then maybe a couple like bed and breakfast, little tiny houses on the property where people could stay at. I'd kind of vision something like Willet, how their bar and patio is set up, but maybe a little bigger on the restaurant side, focusing more on actual meals and not just appetizers. And I would probably have a couple different labels. I like your idea of having a label for all my source stuff and then a label for all of our own distilled stuff. I would be transparent about it, but I don't think I would, like go above and beyond promoting that, hey, this is not ours, this is ours. I would just leave 2 separate labels and maybe on the back of the bottles talk about how this one is sourced and the other one is distilled by us. And yeah, I think that's a quick little rundown about what I would do with my distillery.
Are you looking like Louisville, Lexington area then to be with all in that whole big swing of or swath of distilleries, or a little bit outside that?
I think maybe I don't think Louisville because I think it's just be a little too expensive to get property there.
And plus, you got to age outside of Louisville.
Yeah, plus you got to age outside of Louisville. I would probably, I really like the Bardstown area, so maybe somewhere around Bardstown. And I think anywhere like Lexington could be cool too, but I think anywhere further than Bardstown and Lexington, most of the bourbon tourism just stays between Louisville, Lexington, and Bardstown. So I definitely want to be somewhere in that triangle, even if it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but on the way to either of these 3 places.
Okay. With goal of producing lots of barrels a year and becoming a fairly decent sized distillery after the sourcing starts to run low?
Yeah, I think we would be more on the smaller side,
Okay.
kind of a little more niche. A pattern that I've noticed with breweries, which I think is going to continue into distilleries, is the breweries that have a really cool tap room and good food can get away with having mediocre beer and still be very successful, because that's where you make a lot of your money, is people coming to you and spending money in your gift shop, in your restaurant, in your tap room. There's not as much money to be made on the distribution side. So I would definitely that's why I kind of said, hey, we're going to distill, we're going to let stuff age. I don't want to be one of those new brands that comes out with a 2 and 3 year product. We're going to probably have our first release be like an 8 minimum. Just that way, right when we come out the gate, we got some eyes looking at us.
All right. You wouldn't even put out the blended stuff first?
Well, that's why I said I'd buy like 3 to 6 year stuff. And I would just let that age.
Oh, up to 8. Okay.
Yeah, I would just let that go, maybe even longer. And then I would start distilling. And then while that stuff is aging and while we're starting to distill, I would put all my focus for 3 years on building a really nice restaurant, visitor center, kind of destination spot, so that as soon as we come out with our first bourbon, there's a place you can go visit and see.
All right. That's interesting.
We might make a gin.
There's a little bit of similarities between you two, but some pretty big differences at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, Kentucky versus elsewhere. Yeah, I mean, I think if you're starting up a distillery from scratch, it'll be extremely difficult to only distill right now and not source anything.
Yeah, for sure.
I think 5 or 10 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I would have said, hey, we're not going to source. We're going to distill, and it's all going to be our own through and through. I got mad respect for distilleries that have done that. But I think now it's a little too late to get into the distilling game and having to make all those tweaks. I think you kind of have one shot now when you put your bourbon out there. If people don't like it, they're not going to, stick with you and follow your journey. So,
right. That's why
there's just too much out there.
Yeah, I'm pretty firm about the transparency between brands. And I would even take my blended whiskey transparency a step further than what you said, Jake. And I would put everything that I would possibly could on the bottle, down to mash bills. And if distilleries let me, where it's actually distilled, what distillery it's from. So I think that's important, and could get people interested in other brands that they might not, realize, make good stuff.
Well, I don't think this is going to come as a shocker.
Yeah, let's hear your shitty idea.
Dan, you have to start a distillery.
You guys have seemed cool. It's going to be sad in 2028 when all your guys' doors get shut. So I'm going a completely different direction.
Wait. Hold on. Pause. Why are our doors getting shut? I'm not even open in 2028.
In 2028?
I haven't even opened yet. Yeah.
Well, that's going to be tough then. That's a big loss of $100 million. I gotta scan it and send it over to you guys. Just an article.
I don't care what the bourbon industry is doing. I care about this. I care more about bourbon tourism and how many people are flocking to Kentucky every year to visit distilleries.
Gotcha. All right. So mine's in a completely different area of the country. And mine is a completely different setup. In terms of production, it's going to be a smaller production facility than Whiskey Acres. And that's going to include producing gin, rum, and vodka on top of it. I am starting off with a big chunk of my money and buying not buying a farm.
Oh.
Buying a good chunk of land, so that way I still have something that's worth something at the end of the day. Outside of Big Sky, Montana. And I'm talking 100 acres-ish outside of Big Sky. We're going to have a small distillery. I'm going to spend a lot of money on a really good distiller because we're not going to be producing a ton. It's going to be a one-man operation. I want a distiller that has a lot of experience in multiple types of spirits. to run my distillery and to want to be out in Big Sky. We are going to have a big bar restaurant where it's all of our own products that come in. And on our 100 acres, on my 100 acres of land, there's going to be a big wedding venue. There is going to be a bunch of little retreat cabins out in the mountains. There is going to be some RV sites out in the mountains with electric and with plumbing hookups. So if people want to live out there for a month or more in an RV, they can do that. There's going to be areas where you have individual tent sites out in the middle of nowhere with rentable quads to be able to get you to where you need to go on the property. It's going to be more of a campground / distillery / bar / restaurant / venue place to go. We will buy a lot of whiskey from 1 year old to probably 7 or 8 year old whiskey and do some blending on site. It's going to need to be really small batch because we're really not looking at doing much distribution. It's going to be more of a, like what Jake said, kind of like the brew pub style with a beer industry. The majority of our sales are going to come from just selling through. That way I don't got to pay margins to distributors and to liquor stores. No.
So you're looking at like a pretty localized.
It's more for
business model.
Right. It's my goal. And the reason why, even though I hate vodka and rum and gin, is to get all these California people that are moving out to this area in Bozeman and things where they can escape for a week or a long weekend and be out in this thing called nature that's beautiful.
You don't like California people, though.
I don't like California people, but you know what California people have that Kentucky people don't have?
Money.
Lots of this. Lots and lots and lots of this. And there's gonna be bed and breakfast facility. There's gonna be more money spent on the facilities for people to stay in than what we're gonna spend on the distillery. The distillery is gonna be, if we were doing whiskey for an entire year, we'd do less than 100 barrels of whiskey a year. But we're also gonna throw in gin, vodka, rum in the mix as well too. Focused on the locally sourced. Even though I hate to say this, I'm going after California money, so we're gonna go organic. We are going to make this the West Coast dream vacation to get away and glamp and experience nature and be able to spend money on other things besides just whiskey and things at my facility. Like I said, my goal is to stay self-distro only. Local bars, restaurants, stuff like that in Bozeman we'd sell to. You do have a self-distro limit. I'm guessing it's Illinois laws are similar to Montana laws. If not, probably more beneficial to the distillery in Montana than so in Illinois. But I would make more of a same thing, capitalizing on the tourism, but more of the tourism of the Montana area versus the bourbon tourism that you guys are both talking about, being in the big areas. I think that is that's more my style anyways, is being out in the beautiful nature, having a very small facility where I don't need a lot of employees to run everything. You have a distiller that handles everything on the distillery side. You have some people that run the grounds, and that's my setup. And get that it's California money, baby.
Not terrible.
And at the end of the day, I have 100 acres outside in Big Sky, Montana. That's worth a shit ton of money at the end of the day. So if things do close up, I'm not out of everything. I'm gonna have a big.
I'm thinking that's gonna be 75% of your budget if you're going to buy 100 acres.
Me too. That's kind of what I was thinking of. I don't need much for the distillery because we're not going to be big. Mm-hmm. No, a little bit bigger than Barnstormer and Rockford. It doesn't need to be that big because we're mainly just selling on site. But our thought is the wedding industry, the tourism industry, the glamping industry, those things are all taking off. Oh, while you're here, have some good spirits and some good mixed drinks when you're here. Have some good whiskey when you're here. At the end of the day, that's what I want. I would have a little input on the whiskey side. Other than that, I would let the master distiller that I hire take over that. I don't really need a marketing and sales team because we're just marketing our facility and our property. We're not trying to bust into big markets and try and take out a lot of sales from other places. I feel if I was trying to do a longevity thing, this would have the best shot at being long-lived. Just because I think Montana tourism just is going to continue to rise more and more. And like I said, the glamping side of things, I think that's where I'd rather focus. Is the primary income wouldn't be necessarily the stuff that I'm producing at my distillery, but more or less the rentals of the grounds.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And that's my idea. So I'm going completely different than you guys.
How many
I
of
wouldn't
your
say
customers
completely different, but
how many of your customers are you going to kidnap and hunt on the property per year?
Like number wise or percentage wise?
Let's go percent.
So I would have to invest in a lot of bright orange, blaze orange material for them to wear to make it easier for me. I'd say probably about, honestly, probably about 0.5%, because I don't want it to seem like that's what I'm doing. Like, because then people are not going to come. Like,
Yeah,
these hikers were lost in 100 acres of wildlands around Big Sky. It's probably a bear, not Dan. You got to have some fun when you're out there.
Yeah,
but not a big number. It'd be pretty low just to keep things under wraps so it doesn't scare people away.
Yeah, it sounds like you're gonna farm out all of the actual work at your facility. So
if I have $100 million extra on top of this, I ain't fucking doing shit. I'm gonna be the drunk guy that's there that talks to everybody and make sure they're having a good time. It's like this. Where I used to live, there was a really good steakhouse in a little place called Oregon, Illinois, Greek owned steakhouse, and the owner was there every night, and he'd just be hammered, walking around talking to customers. And the only thing he did was when someone ordered saganaki, he'd come out and he'd start it on fire and yell "Opa!" and then he'd drink. That's what I want to be. Kind of a living legend in my mind, I guess.
That sounds about right.
So go ahead, come at me, bros. What's wrong? What do you guys not like about my thought?
No, I don't dislike anything. I think it's a good plan. I think, we know bourbon might not continue to rise and boom. So I think having that tourism side is good. I like the location because I do think Big Sky already gets a lot of tourists out there. So having a little distillery and place to go would be very beneficial.
I did check. There's a couple around Bozeman. There's nothing in Big Sky for distilleries, but all the Bozeman ones are very similar, small, but they're in Bozeman. Obviously not taking advantage, but using the advantageous, capitalizing on the fact there is a lot of tourists there, so they have a lot of stuff downtown Bozeman. Mm-hmm. I want mine to be more nature outside glamping and get people to leave Bozeman. Big Sky's not that far from Butte either, so people that are in those areas can come out to. Plus, Big Sky's a big golf resort area too. So capitalizing on some of the golf groups that come out, some of the guys like have the guys that do their big golf trips in different parts of the country. They can come out, rent a lodge for the four of them, where they all have a small bedroom, lodge out in the middle of nowhere, and then go golfing at Big Sky. That's my thought.
Yeah.
And I think I'm coming out as the most profitable and the most long run out of you three. Out of those three.
No, I disagree.
Yeah, I
feel very, no matter where bourbon goes, there's always going to be a demand for really, really good bourbon, especially well-aged bourbon. And I feel very, very confident in taking my time, making sure everything we put out, we're going to be small enough where every single thing that gets bottled, every batch, every single barrel is going to be at the highest quality standards. I feel very confident in my palate. The people that I'm going to bring on board, I don't know how to distill, but I do know how to taste very well. And I do feel very confident in my palate that me and the crew will only put out the best of the best whiskeys. And it will be kind of a sought after niche brand, something you're not going to see when you walk into stores all over the place. I like your idea of smaller distribution, only to select areas, maybe even just like locally in Kentucky or at the distillery. But I think if you build it, they will come. I think if you produce a very good product, people will seek it out no matter how many distilleries are out there. You just got to make sure what you're putting out is the best of the best. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be worried about recouping my money right away. So I'm not going to just be like, all right, here's some 4-year bourbon. We need to sell for $50, $60 a bottle to make some money back. Like, don't really care too much about that if I'm getting all this money to start a distillery and have an extra $100 million.
See, mine actually saves me running the long term because if I'm in an area like Big Sky, that's gonna fill a little bit of that itch of all my international hiking trips I do, where I can just every day hike around the mountains, Montana, hike in the beautiful areas around there. That saves me money. I'm not coming and working at any of your distilleries because it's way too fucking hot down south.
I don't want you.
Good. I'm not coming. I want my little cold climate up in the north. So that's kind of my thought. I wanted to put a distillery where I wanted to be. So my thought was, how do I make that work? Because there's not like you guys are capitalizing more, like Jake, Gold Eagle Jake especially, on the Kentucky tourism. Jake, South Carolina is a big growing area. You guys are capitalizing on that. Mine is more of taking all these rich people that come out to Montana to get away, but want all the comforts of modern life. Probably investing some money in Starlink so these people can be out in the woods and still get their TikToks and their
Wi-Fi and
their Pinterests and their Etsy's while they're there. I'm not dealing with any of these people, by the way. That's why I have a campsite camp manager or grounds manager. Like, I'm not talking to any of these fucking people unless they're coming in and drinking.
I think just so you're not, your ego isn't so overinflated. My only criticism of your idea is that your winter business is going to probably take a huge hit.
No,
That's
I
why
disagree.
We have lodges. And
also, it's a big ski area.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And like even like when I was in Salt Lake, the glamping site I stayed at in Salt Lake, the yurt I was in had heat. And then instead of quads, you have snowmobiles that you can take out to your campsites.
All right. Well, you thought it through. There you
go.
Did.
Like I said, mine is more of the tourism style of things that I like. And there's spirits here that you can drink as well. That's my side. But yeah, no, you get the ski vacation. There's a lot of people that like to glamp in the snow. As long as they have hot showers, hot tent, that's all they care about.
That makes sense. All right.
That's how I win this $100 million challenge. That's pretty sweet.
You don't win anything.
Just winning is all I care about, Jake. I don't need a trophy. I'm not.
All right. Well, listeners, vote on who you think has the best idea in the comments section. And
yeah,
that should be a good
please.
Instagram post for Jenna Ray.
Yeah.
Here's what distillery would you go to the most? Jake's shitty distillery in South Carolina. That just is like a copy of Bardstown. Pritzker's probably an investor. Mm-hmm. Gold Eagle Jake's, who's going to have really good whiskey because, let's face it, we trust his palate, not Jake R's palate. In Kentucky, or a cool getaway in the mountains of Montana, where there's going to be bears and everywhere and moose and everywhere and all this wonderful stuff. I think we know who's winning this one.
Yeah, we'll see.
I think it's me. Come on, people.
It's between you, like always, Jake. It's between you and me. Jake R's is always going to fall way behind in second or third. Like me and you are always going to be close to first and second. Jake, you just kind of.
I don't know. I think.
I think
people would be more likely to come to your distillery if you were just using your MBA and did nothing with the production side of things. Like want you.
I'm not doing the blending brand would basically fund all of the operations. So
right, as long as you're not doing anything with the blending brand.
I'm gonna go build like with my own $100,000 or $100 million. I'm gonna build a giant house in the countryside somewhere, buy a Porsche, and build a racetrack so I can just drive around on my property in my Porsche. And I'll check in on the distillery every once in a while.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because as long as you don't have anything to do with the production and blending side, your whiskey might sell.
Mm-hmm.
just not around Lake County in Illinois. Everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, Jake R's part of this. We've tasted his whiskey blends before." Fuck no. What was it? Chocolate Roses? Something.
Chocolate Roses was the one that everyone liked.
After everyone was drunk already, that's the one they liked. What was the one that they didn't like, that everyone definitely didn't like?
I don't remember.
Exactly.
I don't remember what I called it.
Exactly. No, I probably wouldn't buy your whiskey. I'd buy
People
Gold
didn't
Eagle
say they
mixed whiskey.
disliked that one.
They did in voting, Jake. People don't say they dislike RFK, but he's getting less than 2% of the vote right now. So,
Dan, stop making this podcast political. Jeez.
It's a goal of mine now. It's a goal of mine.
All right. Any other final points?
No, I'm just came up with the best idea like always.
Yeah, no, I just think it was a fun topic, kind of change of pace from talking about other distilleries and reviewing whiskey. Just something a little different, and maybe this will inspire somebody to go find 100 million and start a distillery.
Yeah.
And if you're doing one in Montana, give me a shout. I don't need to be the distiller. I'll just come and do whatever needs to be. I'll be the grounds manager. Like, I'm fine with that.
Which, by the way, $100 million as like, I think all three of us would probably agree that that's like maybe the bare minimum required to start a distillery.
A big distillery.
A big distillery.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, my distillery, in terms of the production, the money I'm going to make off my whiskey or my spirits is low.
Yeah, well, yours is not really the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm focusing more on making money from people coming to me.
Mm-hmm.
Which
we're still going to have killer whiskey.
That much money to start something. But,
all right. Well, Jake, talking about people coming to you for killer whiskey.
Ooh,
where can people go? That transition was very seamless.
Great
that
transition.
was very well thought out. You gotta credit early times before 10 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm just gonna say, if you want to have good ideas, drink early times in the early morning. Okay, Jake.
Yeah.
Gold Eagle.
So I even, I don't have a distillery, but you can still come to me right now for great whiskey. goldeaglewine.com, 255 Peterson Road in Libertyville. Gold Eagle Wine and Spirits. Follow us on Instagram at Gold Eagle Wine, Facebook at Gold Eagle Spirits. And we've got a lot of really, really good whiskey. So use that to keep yourself busy while I distill and produce my whiskey in 10 years.
Jake, where can people listen to us? Where can people watch us? Where can people like and share us at? Where can people vote on our poll that we're going to have for who had the best idea for a new distillery?
Yes, you can listen to us on Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts, pretty much any other podcast platform. You can watch us on YouTube and Spotify. Spotify now has a comments section, so go ahead and comment there, as well as on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram at Bourbon Matters, and we'll put up a post for this episode where everyone can vote in the comments on who they think has the best plan for a distillery. There's no prize or anything. We just want to make sure that Dan loses.
I do want to say one more thing, too. We don't normally do this, but I want to back promote an episode. So if this is your first time listening to us, make sure to go back and listen to the one that came out the week before on grain to glass distilling.
Yes.
And some things. There's some really cool topics that we talk about in there. I think that's probably going to be one of my favorite episodes we've ever done, mainly because I talk a lot, and we know that if I'm talking.
That was the most you talked on any episode ever.
Yeah,
and it was excruciating, but,
It's also the most factual episode we've ever had.
It was informative. I would say it's informative.
So, but yeah, I want to give it a shout out for that. I need to get to work and drink more at work today. We have a big event at Whiskey Acres. This is obviously after the episode comes out, but fun times at Whiskey Acres in the spring, summer, and fall. If you ever get a chance to come down for some live music, food trucks, things like that, swing down to Whiskey Acres. We're only about an hour and a half if you go to Gold Eagle. If you're farther south or west of that, it's even less time. So
it's worth it. Definitely worth a day trip out there when they have live music and food trucks there. It's a really good outdoor scene.
So, all right, guys, it's almost 11 a.m. and I finished my first 2-ounce pour. I got 3 tours to do with tastings after each of them, so it's gonna be a good day. A good day. All right. Cheers, guys.
I wouldn't want to be on the 6 o'clock tour.
Yeah, no, you want to be on the 6 o'clock tour today. That's going to be the fun one. That'll be the fun one. I'm just walking around with a bottle at that point. Pour spout straight into the mouth every time. So, all right. Cheers, guys.
All right, cheers.
Cheers.